The following is a Shaw TV Public Affairs presentation. Constituency Report is produced as a public service by members of the BC Legislature through the facilities of Shaw TV.
Hello, welcome to Constituency Report. I'm Tracy Grimsrud. Very pleased to welcome Greg Kyllo to the studio today. He is MLA for Shuswap. Welcome back, Greg. How are you?
Hey, doing great. Thanks for having me on your show, Tracy.
Yeah, wonderful to have you here. And I should also mention your other role as well. You serve as the BC Liberal critic for jobs and technology. How are you enjoying that?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. I share that critic role actually with Jazz Johal, so for jobs, trade, and technology. And I think it really fits well with the work that I do with Shirley Bond when we were in government the last 4 years.
Yeah, definitely. And what does that role entail?
Yeah, so largely as the role identified as critic is to largely criticize and to provide that opportunity to have a look at what the new government policies are with respect to the Ministry of Jobs and Trade and Technology. We go through estimates, which will be coming up here in the next 3-4 weeks. Have an opportunity to actually vet the budget that the government is presenting for that specific ministry, but largely to be an advocate for the sectors that are represented by the ministry. Well,
that's a great segue because I wanted to start by speaking a bit about that NDP budget, their first full budget, which was introduced in February. A lot of people describing it as a tax and spend budget. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, you know, if we go back to midterm budget update in September of last year, despite inheriting a $2.7 billion surplus, which I believe is the largest surplus inherited by any incoming government in the history of Canada, they still chose to raise tax rates. So they raised the tax rate for corporations by 1% and also raised the top tax rate for BC income earners by 2%. So moving forward, you know, we go into the most recent February update and Budget 2018, of course, we saw significant increases in taxation, both with the employer health tax and also the speculation tax. So, you know, these things certainly start to look at eroding business competitiveness in our province and are certainly challenging and things that we will bring forward to make sure that we're providing British Columbians with the ulterior opportunities and what those challenges actually pose for BC.
The speculation tax has been a hot issue of debate, I'm guessing in your neck of the woods. A lot of people are talking about this. Yeah,
well, thankfully it actually doesn't apply to my riding of Shuswap. However, what we were able to determine through the estimates of the Minister of Finance is that there was really no market evaluation undertaken by the current government to clearly determine what areas of the province were going to be impacted by this speculation tax. So that's definitely concerning, and we also were able to identify that there was no real economic modeling that was undertaken to have a look at what the true consequences were going to be, as well as what the unintended consequences. And the speculation tax, I know I was in Kelowna just a couple of weeks ago actually talking with the land developer that was looking at moving forward with a 30-unit townhouse complex. Because of the speculation tax, the way it negatively impacts people living outside of BC, they lost a lot of their pre-sales. And so the project that was going to be providing up to 30 new units of housing in West Kelowna now is actually on the rocks and likely not going to be proceeding. So, you know, the speculation tax, although I appreciate and I think support it being applied to foreign investment coming into British Columbia, I certainly don't agree with it being applied to other provinces across Canada.
What about the employer health tax? You touched on that. It's brought in to replace the MSP. What are folks in your area saying about this one?
Yeah, outraged, largely. You know, when the NDP talk about the fact that the MSP is being eliminated, well, really it's just being replaced. So the EHT is really a replacement tax for the MSP premium. It's putting a lot of additional burden right on the backs of businesses, and it's having a negative impact, not just on the business community, but also when you have a look at all of the different nonprofit organizations, municipalities, school districts. School District 83 in my riding having a significant impact. They run on about a $70 million budget. Wages are actually 90% of the school district budget, so about $63 million in wages. So you add a 2% employer health tax, it has a significant impact. And so The current government has not indicated they're going to fully fund the public service sector, and so school districts are kind of scrambling to make a determination on where they're going to find those extra funds, what programs are going to have to be cut, what layoffs are going to happen in order to actually be able to make up for that difference.
Right.
And and it's not just schools and hospitals, the public service. It's also First Nations, and so it's interesting to note that where the NDP talk about a new way of doing business, open, transparent. When I reached out to a few different First Nations in my riding, they had no consultation whatsoever with respect to this new employer health tax and the impact it was going to have on both their administrative operations as well as their development corporations. So, again, there was a lack of consultation, and I think it truly speaks of incompetence.
And being that you're the jobs critic, when you look at all of these tax policies, are you concerned about the future of employment?
Yeah, absolutely. When we have a look at the thriving business community that we have in BC, the previous Liberal government certainly did a great job with trying to bolster increased economic activity. Minister Shirley Bond, the Minister of Jobs, Tourism, Skills Training and Labour. I had the pleasure of working with her as a parliamentary secretary with largely responsibility for the BC Jobs Plan. And it was largely successful. We led Canada in economic growth. We had the highest number of jobs created of any province in Canada. We also had the lowest unemployment rate. And so there was a lot of different things that were put in place to actually help to drive and support the economic development. What we're seeing now with the additional tax measures that were placed on midterm budget update in 2017 in September, and now the most recent budget 2018, additional costs being put clearly right on the back of BC businesses. And it's very concerning when you have a look at the fact that we want to encourage BC businesses to get into the export market. It's an increasingly globalized economy, but by putting these extra tax burdens right on the back of BC businesses, it is negatively impacting their ability to compete in these international markets. And I'm very concerned that it's going to have a negative impact on the economic growth of our province overall.
We'll have to keep our eye on that for sure. Switching gears a bit, you've been a big advocate of organ donation. Why is this issue so important to you?
Yeah, I've spoken about this before. Back when I was in high school, a very close friend and teacher and coach of mine, Tony Beeftank, he actually came down with a virus that attacked his heart. And I believe it's been almost 29 years now since Tony actually had a heart transplant. He was the second heart transplant recipient in BC. An amazing man, first heart transplant recipient to ever actually run a full marathon. And so I had that early connection with somebody that was very important in my life, a bit of a mentor of mine, to see him going through, the need for an organ transplant, in his case, a heart. And then a number of years ago, my wife, Georgina, her girlfriend, Naomi, got a job working for the Kidney Foundation, and she was sharing with me some of the challenges they have with the organ donation rates in our province. And it was through that discussion, and at the time, Andrew Wilkinson was actually the minister responsible for community services, and worked directly with him to have a look at what we could do on increasing the awareness of organ donation. And we did a program that actually rolled it out through all the BC service centres. We later worked with Minister Todd Stone at the time to have a look at expanding that to the ICBC centres. And it was all just about increasing awareness, and we were very successful in increasing the organ donation registration rates in our province from 17% up to 21%.
Wow.
And with that increased registration, we saw a record number of deceased organ donor transplants last year. So literally saving lives. So it's something that's very important to me.
Absolutely. And it's pretty easy for people to register that decision, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It takes less than a couple minutes. You go to transplant.bc.ca, so transplant.bc.ca. It takes less than a few minutes just to register your wishes, whether you're supportive of it or not. But it's really important for people to actually register their wish.
Absolutely. Well, let's take a look at some of the local projects happening in your riding. Tell us a bit about the Salmon River Bridge and Bruin Bridge projects in the riding.
Yeah, so the Salmon River Bridge, that's part of a fairly large project. It's being put forward in 3 different phases. We had full support of the federal government. It's about a $162.7 million project. A lot of the property acquisitions have now been undertaken. That's about 8 kilometers, basically straight west of Salmon Arm, and going to make a huge impact both for development along that section of the highway as well as improved safety. And some of the early works with preloading is going to be starting this summer. So You know, it's a project that, you know, I certainly was very supportive of. Happy to see our federal government actually supporting us in that endeavor, and happy to see it actually get moving forward. Another large bridge project, which is a little closer to my home in Sicamous, the Bruin Bridge. The bridge is very old. It's a 2-lane bridge, and there's been a lot of design work being done on having a look at a few different options on the replacement of that existing 2-lane bridge with a 4-lane bridge option, and a separate 2-lane bridge option for accessing the west side of the Sicamous Channel. That's one of the options, and then the other is a new 5-lane bridge. So, a pretty expensive project. I understand that the cost magnitude is a little over $200 million because it's part of the Trans-Canada Highway. Of course, our federal government would be participating in that project. Ministry staff are right now just in the throes of making the final determination of which of the 2 options they would likely be bringing forward.
Okay. What about the Sonny Bray intersection? What's happening there?
Yeah, so Sonny Bray, a small little community basically on just outside of Salmon Arm, and they have access off of Highway number 1. There was a large number of accidents on that particular intersection for quite a few years, and I was able to advocate and work with Ministry of Transport staff to have a look at providing some safety improvements to that particular intersection. There was actually a passing lane that was started actually just before the intersection, so we actually moved the passing lane further up the hill. And used that secondary lane to put in a dedicated right-hand turn lane, a new actual flashing amber light, and yeah, it's worked out really well for the community. Excellent.
The Rapattack base in Salmon Arm, we've got a photo to take a look at. What can you tell us about this structure?
Yeah, so Salmon Arm Rapattack base has been in place for I believe upwards of 30 plus years now. An amazing facility. They train all of the folks that are the initial they all, of course, Rapattack. They get flown in by helicopters, so they actually rappel out of these helicopters.
Oh, wow.
And it's pretty amazing. They have to be in very good shape. There's a lot of work that happens with training, and the crew's actually living on site in Salmon Arm. Right. It's been in place for quite a number of years. There was some concern about the Rapattack accommodation piece actually being closed, in which case it would actually put additional burden with those individuals having to find accommodation for the busy fire season, which is also overlaps with our busy tourism season in the Shuswap. And so able to work with former Minister Thompson to ensure that that Rapattack base would actually stay open over this past year. And I have had follow-up conversation with Minister Donaldson, and he's given the assurance that that they're extending the operation of that accommodation base for another year while they do a full evaluation. So I'm hoping to see that carry on.
Definitely. These are all great projects, and I know over your first term in office you secured some $276 million in funding for various initiatives, and being in opposition now doesn't change that drive you have to secure funding for your riding, does it?
No, absolutely. There's a lot of very important projects that are needed in the Shuswap. We're a very rural riding, a fairly large riding geographically, about 8,400 square kilometers, have about 56,000 constituents. But being on that Trans-Canada Highway, that's one of the concerns that a lot of residents have on improved safety measures that could be undertaken. So the 4-laning of the Trans-Canada Highway from Kamloops right to the Alberta border is one of the kind of primary focuses, both from a safety aspect, but also just for improving travel times, and there's a lot of goods that actually move through the Shuswap on a daily basis. So I want to provide that opportunity for those increased safety improvements.
And one more question before we head to a break. The issue of invasive mussels has been discussed for quite some time now, and boating season just around the corner. Any thoughts you want to share on this issue?
Yeah, it's very concerning. The mussels actually originally originated in Russia, is my understanding, and they were introduced to the Great Lakes. They've made their way kind of across Canada and the United States. They're now on Lake Powell, which is basically the headwaters of the Colorado River. My wife and I were actually fortunate to go down there last year and actually speak with some of the folks that are dealing with it now that it's actually entered the lake. And I'll tell you what, there's not enough money that we could spend to try and prevent it from actually entering our lakes. It has a very negative impact, both on the boating public, but also any hydroelectric projects. It actually, the mussels will grow very quickly, and they can restrict pipe sizes, both for intakes for municipalities, hydroelectric, and it's something that we certainly want to be making lots of efforts to try and ensure that we can keep them out of our lakes in British Columbia.
Definitely. We're going to take a short break here on Constituency Report. Grab a pen and paper. We'll put up contact information for MLA Greg Kyllo. We'll be back to chat much more with him right after this. Welcome back to Constituency Report as we continue our chat today with Greg Kyllo, MLA for Shuswap. And of course, still more great local initiatives to chat about, Greg. I want to mention the rail trail, $2.17 million in funding going towards this piece of infrastructure. How will it benefit the community?
Oh, it's an amazing piece of infrastructure. When I first actually ran back in 2013, it was one of the issues that I saw as having a huge opportunity for the entire region. So the old CP rail line that runs from Sicamous off of the CP main line heading south, it actually goes right along Mara Lake through the communities of Grinrod, Armstrong, Spelmsheen. And that particular rail line was disbanded back in 2009, and there was a number of approaches trying to have a look at how we could acquire it, and very fortunate to have been a part of working with Columbia Shuswap Regional District and the Regional District of the North Okanagan and Splatcheen First Nations. It goes through about 3 different parts of the Splatcheen First Nations Reserve. And so Chief Wayne Christian was actually very instrumental in being supportive of trying to make sure that the rail line stayed in its entirety. And it's going to be turned into a beautiful trail for hiking and walking, and of course being a rail bed, it's very flat, and it's just absolutely picturesque. It runs right alongside Mara Lake and Roseman Lake, just a little bit further south, and can provide great opportunities. When you have a look at some of the success of some of the other rail lines, you know, the Galloping Goose and some of the ones in the Okanagan Rail Trail, I think this is just a great opportunity to try and connect all of these different trails and provide huge opportunities for hiking and biking in the Shuswap.
Yeah, that will attract a lot of people, I'm sure. There's so many wonderful community events in the Shuswap. We've got quite a few photos to take a look at. We're going to start with the 4-H auction. How did you enjoy this event?
Yeah, it was a great event. I was actually fortunate enough to be the bidder, the winner of this particular young bull, this young steer. Carson was part of 4-H, and he raised this little cow. And 4-H is such a great community-minded event. These young kids, they learn all about business, so they have to actually go to a bank. Credit union is very involved, as well as Community Future. So young kids, Carson, I believe, is only about 11 years old, had to go in and do a bit of a business plan and setting up. He was going to borrow the money for the cow, had to determine all of the feed costs and raise the cow and then go to auction.
Yeah.
And I was the fortunate bidder.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good for Carson.
Yeah. It was interesting when we were walking with the young cow over to get a picture, and Carson was quite upset. Of course, he's raised this cow, and knowing that he's going to be going off to the slaughterhouse, he was quite upset. And I said to Carson, I said, well, you do realize that what the true purpose in life is for a young steer? And he's like, no, what's that? And I said, to taste delicious. And he started to laugh.
Oh, okay, good.
But then, of course, he kind of realized what he just said, and he started to cry a little bit. But yeah, no, he was great. And his mom and dad actually dropped off a nice little photograph and a box of condiments. So I got some steak spice and some barbecue sauce. So yeah, Carson, a pretty amazing young man.
Yeah, way to share those life lessons, Greg. Well, speaking of kids and animals, I believe your granddaughter is featured in this next set of photos. They're from Breakfast on the Farm, and the next one is coming up in June, I understand?
That's right.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's an amazing event. I believe last year there's a little over 700 people attended.
Yeah.
And what a great initiative for the local agricultural community to provide an opportunity for folks to come out and have breakfast on the farm, get a little bit better understanding of what actually happens in agriculture in British Columbia.
There she is.
And there's little Kylie, just turned 4 years old.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Looks busy. You attended the recent Coda Dairy Farm tour. How did you enjoy that one?
Yeah, that was great. MLA Eric Foster from Vernon-Monashee, as well as federal MP Mel Arnold, were also in attendance, as well as a lot of the local mayors and councillors. And again, this is just a great initiative where you see industry reaching out and providing educational awareness to elected officials on what actually happens on a dairy farm. So yeah, it was a great event, and we spent about 4 or 5 hours learning everything from what happens in fields as far as providing nutrients and crop uptake. Had a significant concern in the riding last year in the community of Spalmsheen. And so it's really important for us to have a better understanding of what actually happens on the land base, why there's a need for providing nutrients for crop growth, and then all the different measures that are actually undertaken to provide sustainability in our agricultural sector.
Our next photo has you pictured with the local Mitchell family. Tell us a bit about Ron Mitchell and his contributions.
Yeah, Ron and his wife Rose. Ron is just an amazing man. Unfortunately, he was taken from us far too soon here a number of months ago. Yeah, Ron and his 2 boys, Jake and Josh, actually have Spa Hills Farm, so a great farm. They also have an auto restoration business. And Ron was kind enough to drive me in every parade over the last 5 years now. And so it was really, really sad to see Ron go. I did do a bit of a statement in the House about Ron. Did a lot in the local community. And Ron and Rose, they also provided supports for young children. So they actually took children into their home. And yeah, it's sad to see them go, but Rose is firm and said that she's absolutely going to be driving us yet again in the Falcon Parade, which is coming up here in May.
Well, speaking of great local constituents, want to mention the White Lake Residents Association. They held their annual barbecue. Tell us a bit about this community in your riding.
Yeah, White Lake, it's unincorporated. It's part of the Columbia Shuswap Regional District. They've got an amazing organization. President Brian Avery does a great job of reaching out in the community. They're really focused on improving fishing on White Lake. It's one of the best fly fishing lakes in British Columbia. And so they've really taken a lot of lead in working both with BC Parks and with Forest Lands and Natural Resource Operations on providing a lot of information that can better help Flinro actually manage fish stocks on the lake. But a great organization, happy to support them. My riding association of Shuswap, my president, Brian Cowan, we actually go out there every year and we provide burgers, and it's all by donation, and the proceeds actually go back to the White Lake Community Association. So that's one way for a political organization to actually try and give back to the communities that provide support for them.
Wonderful. You took part in the Ride, Don't Hide event. Tell us a bit about the cause behind this one.
Yeah, the Ride, Don't Hide, it's really about reducing the stigma around mental health issues. And as the name, Ride, Don't Hide, it's trying to improve the opportunity for people to talk about their issues. My wife, Georgina, we're going to have our 30th wedding anniversary coming up this September.
Awesome.
And Georgina, certainly has been very kind and doesn't mind me sharing the fact that she has challenged with mental illness from time to time. And so it's a great event to be able to come out and provide that support. And my wife and myself have both spoke at the event on a number of occasions, and just trying to encourage people that if you're having issues and challenges with mental health, to not be afraid of talking about it. If you have a broken arm, you're happy to show off your broken arm and get people to sign your cast.
Right.
And yet there's still this stigma. And if you're challenged with mental health issues and that sort of thing, just want to really encourage people to talk to their family and friends and their medical practitioners about that.
Great message for sure. Well, the CP Holiday Train is a real colorful family favorite event. Tell us a bit about this annual event.
Yeah, it's great. CP have been doing this for quite a number of years now, and actually have 4 stops in my riding, which is fantastic. So they stop in Sicamous, in Canoe this past year, Salmon Arm, and then they end up out in Notch Hill at the very last stop of the day. It's all about raising money for food banks across British Columbia. I was on the train back in 2013, the first time I was on. I noticed there were some empty seats, and Mike Lavecchio, who's the government relations manager with CP, I sent Mike a note. I said, Mike, I noticed there was a bunch of empty seats. I said, do you think I could get maybe 10 extra seats for next year? And he's like, well, what do you have in mind? And I said, I think we could actually raise some funds to help with the food bank. And so Brian Cowan, my riding association president, and myself have been working, and we sell the tickets for $200 a piece. It's a great venue, and so that's $2,000 annually that we're able to then give back to local food banks right in the area. And we've been doing that for 4 years now, so a little over $8,000 raised for food banks. Again, it wouldn't be possible without the generosity of CP.
Yeah, those dollars are so helpful. That's great. And I know that event is a lot of fun. I'm sure the grandchildren love it. How many grandchildren are you at now, Greg?
Yeah, well, we're up to 6. We had 5 little girls, all under 4 years of age.
Wow.
And I finally got a grandson about a year ago, little Nolan Gregory, my namesake. And so, yeah, we've got 6 and another one due in July.
Oh, wow. So Pops is kept pretty busy, I would
Pops
imagine.
is busy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And all under 4. That's
Yeah.
quite amazing. Well, we always love highlighting some great folks in the community. We want to mention Lena Johnstone, who recently marked 109 years.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, what an amazing lady. I had an opportunity to meet Lena for her 105th birthday. And so this year was her 109th, and she's still going strong. Sharp as a tack, moved out with her family from Monitor, Alberta about 80 years ago. It was interesting, she was telling me how they loaded everything that they own, all their worldly possessions, into a boxcar. A couple horses, a cow, calf, chickens, and all of their furniture. And they actually rode in the boxcar with all their belongings. It was a 2-day trip all the way to Notch Hill. But yeah, pretty amazing lady, and 109.
Amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We want to recognize Natalie Wilkie as well. I hear she took home 3 medals from the recent Paralympic Games.
Yeah, for a 17-year-old, isn't that something? She had the trifecta, so a gold, a silver, and a bronze in different events. But yeah, we're extremely proud of her. She lost 4 fingers actually in a school accident a couple of years ago, and when she first had the accident, she was so concerned that she wasn't going to be able to hold her pole, and so she was really worried about her ability to continue to ski. But yeah, she's setting records, and we're extremely proud of her.
Excellent. And really quickly, we want to mention Pearl Heemstra as well, and her work around autism and focusability.
Yeah, Pearl is an amazing lady. They have a son who has autism, and she's really been working on providing coaching and mentoring to try and help those with on the autism spectrum actually get into the workplace, and so providing a bit of extra coaching to assist them with being successful in employment.
Great. And finally, Greg, you recently visited a classroom at your former high school, Eagle River, to chat about the inner workings of government. You really enjoy these visits, don't you?
Yeah, it was great. Interesting going back after graduating there 32 years ago this June. But yeah, I had an opportunity to go into a grade 11 and 12 law class, talk just about government. And so it was great to be able to speak to these young students about politics and what the role of an MLA is, both for the constituency work as well as the legislative work down here in Victoria. And yeah, they were fairly engaged even for a late Friday afternoon.
Oh, yeah, that's a tough sell sometimes. Well, thanks so much for being on the show today, Greg. It was wonderful to have you.
Tracy, always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Greg Kyllo, he is MLA for Shuswap. If you'd like more information about some of the topics and issues we've discussed on the program today, you can check out his website, gregkyllomla.ca. You can find him active on Facebook and Twitter as well. Thanks so much for watching Constituency Report.